Hello, my name is Irina. Welcome to Fiberchats, and today my guest is Jen Smith from Matchmaker Yarns. Hi, Jen.
Hi, thanks
Welcome
so
to.
much for having me.
Hi, my pleasure. So I wanted to ask you, what came first, the chicken or the eggs? Were you a knitter first? Did you start with dyeing? What's your story?
Knitting first. Yeah, I've been a knitter for 20 years. So, yeah, knitting was, while I was raising my kids, I was much more into photography and, making memory albums of
Right.
their years. And as they got a little older, they started needing things like scarves and hats and mittens. And so I started knitting those things for them. And, eventually it all just kind of became my number one hobby and the thing I wanted to do the most. Yeah, and then at some point I found, the wool really nice yarn, and then I was a goner at that point.
Right. So
Yeah.
what was like the first your first experience with yarn dyeing? How did you come up to that?
Oh, I took a class at a local yarn shop that was offered by a dyer who lives in my area. And so I was able to spend a really awesome afternoon with, a couple of tubs of water and some dye crystals and mixed in with citric acid and dyed two skeins of yarn, and I was completely hooked.
Right. Was it so like you came from that class, right? Knowing like the very basics, obviously, because they can't
Mhm.
go too in depth. Was it difficult to find information on how to do something like more advanced? How did you go from that like one class to the next step, the whole collection?
That's a good question. Honestly, I think a lot of it is research, independent research that you can find information on the internet, on YouTube. There's so many really, really good videos. There's some really amazing teachers out there who will, share information with you and help you to refine, your skills so that you can then find your color expression, that's unique to you. And just really lucky that I kind of got connected in with a couple people who just encouraged me, um, and practice. And that's the other thing. You just have to do it. You just have to practice. You're gonna have stuff that doesn't come out the way you pictured in your head, and that's okay. But it's really good. It's like an amazing feeling to knit with something that you have created the color story yourself.
Right.
It's a lovely form of expression, and color. Just that color application um, is a an is a really fun creative process for me too. It's like painting kind of for me. And so yeah, that's just keep on doing it. Then you learn more and you do better when you learn more.
So like if you like before, right, when you buy yarn, so you just come to the store, you see a pretty color that you like, you buy it. Now that you come to the yarn store, do you look at it completely different?
In a way, yeah, I do. In a way, I when I go to yarn stores now, I always buy from the yarn store when I'm out of town, because for me, that's a souvenir. That's part of my trip. That's part
Right.
of the memory. And when I make that item, I'm always going to remember I bought this at that yarn shop I found in, wherever. And so I always buy something from every place I go. Um, and when I'm going for, to a yarn shop where I know they have a really big selection. What I'm really going to be looking for is what's special, right? Like what's unique to that store. What's a colorway maybe just for that store or that season? Is there a crawl happening and they've dyed a special color that's just for the crawl? Those are the things that I'm happy to, plunk down my card for.
Right. So when you buy yarn, do you approach it like, is it, do you have a plan for it? Do you have a project in mind? Or you just walk in and whatever jumps at you, you're like, okay, you have to come home with me?
I have no, I have very well, I have some self control. But I honestly, when I see yarn that makes my skirt fly up, I'm going to buy it. And
Right.
I don't have to have a project for it. If I love it, then I know I'll find a good home for it later.
Well,
So,
but then I have a follow-up question. So
okay.
if you buy yarn and you don't have a project in mind, do you buy one skein, two skeins, sweater quantity?
Mm, I can't afford a sort of quantity of Indie Dyer yarn, so that's a no. Most of the time, so I will buy one or two skeins depending on, something sometimes will strike me as, oh, this would be perfect for a cowl, or this will be perfect for, a general idea of our project, or oh, I know I have something that I could put this with to do a like a shawl that has more than one skein in it of different colors, or a sweater that's like that too, like a fade or something like that. And if I know that it's going to be maybe something like that, then I will probably just buy one. Or if I know for sure, oh, this will be perfect for socks for so and so, then I'll just buy one. But if I'm not sure, then I'll buy two or three.
Right. I graduated to that way of thinking because I used to buy one skein and then I got like collection of 100 single skeins and I was like, you know what? I should start buying two, just in case.
Yeah. And if I'm really far from home and it's a really pretty, color palette, I'll probably pick up three, especially if it's like a larger, because like well, it depends on the weight. So if it's like a fingering sock yarn, and I want to buy three, then I know I could probably make a sweater for, my sister who's a smaller size, or my daughter.
Right.
So I kind of try to keep that in mind too.
Right. So how do you see yourself? Like, how did you change from that first class? Like, what kind of dyer you are in comparison to that lady that came out of that class?
Gosh. Whew. I am probably more knowledgeable about the process of and the behavior of different yarns and different dyes and different dye colors. And there are some technical skills that are important that you can't learn in a fun workshop, right? And so those are, those I think are things that ensure your quality is where you would want it to be.
Right.
And so that's, that technical skill development, I would say, is where, my development has continued. But I'm always looking at color and photos and, combinations of things, and just kind of filing things away in my mind of, ooh, that's pretty together, or ooh, that, so I'm constantly looking at, I take photos wherever I go of interesting textures that, hey, I could try to make this in yarn, or
Right.
colors put together, combined in nature. So I think when my children were younger and I was raising kids, I was often thinking about things in terms of, how would this make a nice photo of my children? And now I'm thinking about things in terms of, how can I put these, interesting colors or textures together to make something, for Matchmaker.
Right. I actually wanted to ask you a question. So I talked to two different indie dyers who had like very different view of the dyeing process. So I talked to Francesco from Dark Omen Yarn, and he sort of thought of the yarn dyeing as more of like science. So he saw himself more of a technician than an
Mm-hmm.
artist necessarily. And
Mm.
then I was talking to Ronnie from Inspired Fiberworks, and that girl just like jumped in and like started doing some magic with the colors. And she's like absolutely an artist, right? And they have huge respect for each other, huge admiration for each other's work, but for different reasons, basically, because
Mm-hmm.
he's impressed with her being so brave and jumping into it, and she's impressed by his skill level and his knowledge and depth of his knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach yarn dyeing? For you, like, is it for you more technical thing or more artistic thing?
Artistic. Yeah, 100%. The technical skills are important, and I completely honor the data and the requirements to be precise. I do that in my day job a lot, so I get it. And I love the opportunity to create color on yarn that's balanced and vibrant and beautiful. That's really my goal. And so when I sometimes will go in and say I'm going to make like my solstice colorways, I've done a summer solstice and a winter solstice, and those are like tonal solids. So that's kind of some of the ways that I'll have some inspiration is through I want to do something that I can assign in my mind a color to, and and then kind of obtain it in the by mixing the colors that I have for the dye.
So you mentioned day job. What is the day job?
Oh, I work for the state of Washington, where I live, and I work in support of vulnerable adults and disabled people living in the setting of their choice, most often their homes, with supported services. So I work in support of making sure those services get delivered correctly.
So how do you balance it all? I mean, you have family, you have kids, you're working, and you're dyeing yarn. Like, how do you find time? And you're knitting, obviously.
I probably knit. I knit every day, so knitting is always on the table, no matter what. My kids are grown, so that helps a lot. And I have a cleaner. I get help.
Oh, that's important.
Right? I mean, there are things that I just can't keep up with and do, the creative pursuits and the things that I want to do. So that's how.
So when you started first, right? I'm picturing you did it probably in your kitchen and one pot. What's your operation looks like now?
Oh, that's a fun question. We've actually just been creating some new space in our garage to shift the operations there, which is much preferred over the kitchen because, the kitchen still needs to function for meals. But your kitchen is really clean when you're a yarn dyer because you use bleach for everything. So we have a door from Amazon. It's a nice big 8-foot long, 4 feet wide door that I put on its side, and we have that set up as a workspace table, and I've got burners set up with my dye pans going, and I'm still trying to figure out the best storage solution for yarn and dyes, but that's part of the fun, of getting new space and having your space be the way you want it.
So how did you go from like dyeing that first skein for yourself, right, just for fun, and then going into business? Like, what was that thing that pushed you to get into the business?
I really, really enjoy the idea of natural dyeing and natural fibers, and so I really I just have this kind of picture in my mind of like a capstone project where I want to take yarn from fleece to all the way to finished garment. And so I'm kind of, working backwards almost in the skill sets because, I know how to knit. I can make a sweater. I know how to make the yarn together to be the color that I want. I'm done there. And, and then I kind of am gonna, work backwards as I feel like, I'm ready to move on. Right. And so as I started dyeing the yarns that I was dyeing, I really got enthralled and excited with natural dyings. And so I started dyeing with avocado and other food items. And, that was really fun. I actually dyed some really beautiful pink yarn with some flowers, some roses that my husband gave me for our 20th anniversary, and I was able to preserve them in color form by, by making a dye out of them. However, the natural dyes, and especially color that you obtain from flowers, tends to not always be super color fast. And so I got really obsessed about thinking about quality, and wanting to make sure that if somebody's going to part with their hard-earned dollar, that it's going to be a product that they really, really, it honors that exchange, right? That they've worked hard for their money, and they, people should receive something that, is going to stay the same color and all of that. And so I really just, and I am not at all saying that natural dyes don't work. That's not at all I'm saying my skill level was more comfortable with, and I had a friend tell me, I always know what color I'm going to get. I don't have to guess. She says, you could try, just do a small order, get some, so I just started doing it. And, one led to 5, which led to 10, which led to 100. And I started out really small and just got really, really fortunate with encouragement and people who said, hey, bring your yarn to my shop, or, I'd love to help you sell. And, as I've continued to have those encounters and experiences, I've also just continued to develop my skill and, take classes and keep learning and keep, talking with people, who also do this. And, yeah.
Well, was it difficult for you to market yourself in the beginning? Was it difficult to gain that first, customer base?
I still feel like I'm in the beginning. Yeah, I'm in the 3rd year of the business. I still completely feel like it's new. It's a beginner business. I'm so small. Right. I don't even have 500 Instagram followers. So one of the ways that
hopefully it will help. Interview will help and bring you traffic.
That would be fun. Yeah, that's fun. One of the ways that I started getting, a little bit of notice is there's a newsletter that goes out by the folks that do Knit Crate. And so some of my yarn was in those newsletters a few months in a row, and that kind of helped me to start to develop, some sales, and get some traction in that area. Yeah. And then just pretty soon stuff started to happen around the Etsy shop. And then I did the Vogue, the first Vogue Knitting Live. What is it? The show that they did online, the very first one. I decided to vend for that. And so I was able to get some good, I don't like the word exposure, but, people were introduced to, the business through that. Marketing is challenging, especially when, I consider myself to be like a micro business, and, this is not my full-time thing. Last year, there was a ton of problems with supply chain issues.
Right.
So it was really hard to even get yarn to dye. So, you take a step back. I, also felt like it was a really important time to focus on the really important social justice causes that came to the forefront that needed to be discussed, more fruitfully and more fully, and see change that we need to have happen in our culture and our communities, come forward. And that really was, combined with the supply chain issues and the pandemic, it's just kind of been like, I'll just step back and step forward when I feel like it's, more better time. So, yeah.
Well, talking of pandemic, did that change, besides the supply, right? Besides the problem with getting yarn to dye, did that also give you more time to experiment with colors and to discover yourself?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I really spent a lot of time dyeing yarn during the pandemic because my daughter moved out. My oldest moved to Tennessee. My husband was working out of state. And so it was by myself quite a lot. So I did a lot of yarn dyeing. And, it also really changed my marketing plan at the end of 2019, looking ahead to 2020, I had thought, I want to do 2 shows and, a couple of trunk shows, and we'll just kind of, let it lie like that. It'll be spread out through the year. So it won't feel like too much. It'll be fine.
Right.
And then, no shows, no trunk shows, nothing went the way I thought it would for my business plan.
Right.
Yeah, so you have to think on your feet. You have to be flexible. And um, I'm also really, really fortunate that this is not my main, source of income like it is for so many other people. And that's kind of that's also part of why I just decided to step back and let, the people who need this to pay their bills, do their work. And now I can get yarn again, and I'm really itchy to get back to the color. And I got to do a yarn crawl stamp table, man the stamp table at my local yarn shop this
Right.
spring, and it was so wonderful to get to see knitters in public, real people. And after a year and a half, not seeing anyone, and to witness all of the ways that knitting brings people together and
Right.
has their, their best friends and their sisters and their whole families, coming out to meet up. And I just, that's the best.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
What do you have preference between tonals and the speckles? Like, is there a favorite child of yours there?
Favorite child. Well, I mean, rainbow fish is probably one of my, and so it's not like completely on camera, so I'm just going to scooch it over, but this
Yeah.
is probably one of my favorites and probably the one that I'm best known for. So this is there's no speckles here. It's sparkle yarn, and it's,
Right.
a variegated tonal. So you can see there's several colors in here,
Right.
but I do really like to do a nice solid that has some textural, wave in it that, you can wear it and the color will shift a little bit and move a little bit with you when you're wearing it. And I just think that's really beautiful. And so that's probably where my heart lies.
Right. And do you have the favorite thickness of yarn to dye or to like knit with? Like, what do you usually gravitate toward?
Uh, to knit with is probably fingering. I do really like the quickness of, a DK or a worsted that, goes a little faster. So that's a big draw. I just got a knitting machine and I'm working on getting that all going. So I know I'm going to have to make friends with a thicker yarn to,
Right.
be really successful with the knitting machine.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then to dye, I don't have a preference. They're all, they're all fun.
How do you decide like on colors? Do you create collections or do you work with like individual colors?
It kind of depends on what strikes me. In the fall, last summer I caught an idea to do to break down a painting into its color components, and then
Hmm.
I worked with a designer friend to create a wrap pattern. And then we put that out as a kit together. So I was really, really busy working on, that color family, which was the golds and the greens, and just a really beautiful, rich, deep colorway. The painting was The Kiss by Gustav Klimt.
Hmm.
And so that was a really fun project. And that kind of being just one person, you really can only go in one direction. So that took me in down that road, for pretty much the rest of last year. So this year I'm, more thinking about looking at, I'm always inspired by nature, geology, rocks, crystals, flowers, leaf patterns.
Right.
Yeah, so those are the types of things that, pretty much inspire me. These I did this year as a natural colorway. This was really inspiring because we have this weed growing in our yard. It's blooms in the spring, and it's called red nettle,
Hmm.
and you can make a dye with it. So I harvested some and cleared out one of my raised beds at the same time. So win-win.
Right.
And then you can add some iron to the water, and you get this incredibly beautiful sage green
Right.
color.
Right.
And I mean, that's magic. That's just magic. So
Do
why
you
wouldn't you want
ever
to play with magic?
Right? Do you ever have a problem of recreating your colors?
No, I keep really, really good notes, and that's the data part. So I always write it all down and measure, and I also take photos often of the setup of the which colors I've used and the measuring spoons and whatnot, and then I'll photo that with the picture of the yarn in the dye pan after the color's been applied. So then I remember where I've applied it, and I keep that in an online, like a notebook.
Right. Um, have you ever gotten a color that you really, really disliked that didn't come out as
Mm-hmm.
planned?
Sure. Yes, definitely.
Is that something that happens like very rarely, or like do you usually have a picture of what you're planning to get and it comes very close to that, or are there a lot of surprises?
It's usually that it comes close to what I have in mind.
Right.
When I do get surprised, it's often because I wasn't totally sure about my first inclination, or I didn't have a full plan, and and then when it came out, I just said, nope, that's not, nope, start over, doing something else, and that's totally okay.
Right.
So yeah,
So what happened to that yarn? What do you
I
do?
overdyed it. I overdyed it. Yep. Yep. It became a whole different color, totally different. And it's much better now. And so that's the thing, it tells you when it's done, right? Like that's what I think. The yarn will just say, oh, I'm enough. I'm enough now. And you kind of just keep going until like it's told you that it's finished.
Right. Do you ever create like custom colors per customer request? Like, would people send you a picture of something, or like I want to, or describe something, and you would try to get that color? Have that ever happen?
Yeah, I have done that. So not exactly the way you've set it up, but one of my sweet Instagram friends had a really beautiful Scottish Straight kitty, and um, I just absolutely fell in love with this kitty that I had never met. And when her kitty passed, she posted, on Instagram that the kitty passed, and I was really sad. I was grieving myself, her loss. I know how much she loved her, and so I made her some yarn for the kitty's colors and sent it to her, just to help you honor your pet, and remember her, and because she was very special. And then somebody else that I am friends with on Instagram said, hey, my kitty passed away, would you do this for me too? And so that kind of started a couple, and I've done a couple other memorial yarns too. So I have yeah, so those have happened in that way.
Right. Do you like collaborating with designers? Is that something you're having fun with, or is it making it more difficult because
Oh
you like
no.
another person?
Oh no, so much fun. It's so much fun when you can talk to a designer and they get your vision, or you get their vision, and you can, really collaborate together. I love the opportunities to collaborate. That's my favorite.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, let me ask you this question. So, a friend of mine was trying to get into the yarn dyeing, and his biggest frustration at the beginning was to take an accurate picture because he would like spend hours trying to get the right color in the picture, and that was like the most frustrating thing. How do you do that? How do you showcase your colors to the full advantage?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's so important, especially because we can't hold and touch with our hands right
Right.
now, when we want to buy. So I take my pictures in natural light as much as I possibly can. I have a nice Canon camera for for product photography.
Right.
I edit my images in Lightroom, and do some final work in Photoshop as needed. I like to add a little logo or things like that. And then, yeah, that is the other time consuming. And luckily that's the other part that I really like
Right.
is the photo part.
So like, okay, like when you dyed yarn, right? So you dye it, you rinse it, you dry it, but then you have to start twisting, labeling, putting it on
The work.
putting it on Etsy, like shipping it, wrapping it, all that stuff. Do you have any help or you one woman show?
I'm one woman show. My daughter was helping me with shipping. She was my little shipping elf for a while, but she's moved away to another state to go live with her husband. So I guess that's where what they want to do. But yeah, no, I don't really have any. I am not, um, overwhelmed with orders, I guess I should say. So it's really I do orders often on my lunch break, and I just take them to the post office, when I'm on my way back to get back to work.
Right. So in your ideal world, right? Let's say it wasn't about money. Like let's say your dream in regards to this business. Where do you see yourself? Like what would be a dream come true?
Ooh, what's the big dream vision? Well, I kind of mentioned already, I really love natural yarns and natural dye. I would really, really love to get to be able to the point of understanding that end of yarn and fiber processing better. And so I can envision a Matchmaker Naturals line. That is definitely in, planning stages.
Right.
It's always about sourcing. I love the idea of finding, Pacific Northwest, Washington wool, and that's definitely how that's going to come about when it does. So that's one end. I'd love to have a storefront, but who knows? It's hard to say. It's one of those things where it's kind of like, I really truly believe that what's for me won't miss me, and what's coming to me is what's in my highest and greatest good. And so it won't come before I'm ready for it. And so I'm ready for what's coming my way, and I trust that it won't be too much
Right.
at the right time.
What would you say like the best thing that happened to you from starting this business?
Definitely the friendships and the community and the bonding with other knitters, with everyone else in the fiber community.
Right.
My life is so enriched from doing this.
And do you so like Instagram, is Instagram the only social media you use, or do you use other platforms as well?
I have a Facebook page. I do admit I'm not as active on it. So yeah, not very, I can only do one social media really at a time.
Well, if you change your mind, a friend of mine and I recently opened a new Facebook group on called Knitters Gonna Knit, and we actually encourage everybody to advertise their product there. So you can advertise your yarns there, and that's gonna create whole new exposure for you.
Thank you. That's so awesome. I'm in the group. So,
Right.
and
So
I've actually
start
invited a
posting.
few other people. Invite my friends, my nitty friends that I'm on Facebook with. So yeah, I'm in there. There's
I'll
some
tell you, like,
amazing projects in that group.
I mean, the thing that I like the most about that specific rule in the group that like people encourage to post is that I see a lot of collaborations happening. So I see like
Right.
designers getting together with the yarn dyers, testers being found. Like there's a lot of things happening that's like sort of like you feel like it's a
Awesome.
family, you know? So
Yeah, that's so fun that it's grown to the point now where you're seeing those organic connections being made. That's amazing. That's
right.
so amazing. I love that.
Do you have a favorite project as far as knitting, like something you always gravitate towards?
I think I'm a slow knitter. So I take forever on my projects, it seems like. And I still am, knitting sweaters that I found on my Ravelry feed, like, I don't know, 3 years ago. So So I would say sweaters. I am really drawn to knitting sweaters. I enjoy that quite a bit. I've done several for myself, and so I think it's probably time I branch out and make some sweaters for some people in my family.
Have you ever considered getting into design?
Oh no, that's the math part. I'm not the math. No, no, no. That is not an outlet for me. That's hard.
It's so funny because like I had this conversation a number of times when people ask me when I'm going to start designing. And I was talking one time to my husband about it, and he was like, listen, there is Rachmaninoff, who writes the concerto, and then there is Horowitz, who plays it better than anybody else. So you can be a performer or you can be the designer. It doesn't necessarily mean that one is less than the other. It's just like people enjoy different things. So
Yes, yes.
I guess.
And when you meet up with somebody who, matches with your skills and you make something together, it's amazing.
Right.
That's how I felt with the Kiss Kit with Kelly Spenhoff. It was amazing. The project that we put together was so beautiful. And, the people that I hope have their rats love them. And I think that's, to me, it's not just a collaboration project. To me, we created something that's really special.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you're gonna open your new website.
Yeah.
Anybody helped you with that, or are you like learning the whole thing on your own?
I'm learning. My sweet daughter, thank goodness for her, took a look at it and made a few edits and adjustments and said, your background needs to be a different color and let's fix those fonts. And thankfully for me, she was willing to give me some of her time before she moved, which was just this week. But yeah, I'm using a platform, so it's not 100% from scratch. So that makes it a little bit easier.
Right. Do you have any like special colorway in mind for the opening of that new store?
Yeah, so that's going to be, well, these and these are probably one of the ones that I'm really excited about. I don't know if you'll be able to see, this is a really dark blue, but it's got a lot of really neat green and deeper kinds of color stories in it. And this one is called the Great Conjunction. This is for the planetary conjunction that we had in December, where all of the planets were in alignment for the first time in so long, right? I don't remember all the details anymore, but I was completely enraptured by that whole process. I was driving out, at my house at, the sunset, trying to find the horizon line because I have a lot of trees around me, so I really had to go find it. And yeah, I was completely obsessed with the Saturn and just the whole story. It grabbed me. So I did a lot of that. I have quite a bit of those. And then I just got some other colors that I've been working on throughout the year so far. I haven't really released any new colors. A lot of my yarn was at a yarn shop here in Olympia that is moving. So I didn't have much yarn here. Most of it was there, and so now I'm going to go ahead and add that yarn back to the website, and I think it's good timing. It'll come together.
Right. Do you have any plans for like new collaborations in the works? Is there something's happening interesting that you can tell us?
I don't know if there's anything I can tell you about. I have a couple of ideas. I would love to collaborate with a couple of other dyers that I am friends with and do like a dyers collaborative.
That might be super interesting, actually.
Yeah, I think so too. I've seen a few of those, happen with other groups, and so I'm hoping to kind of put something like that together. And I have to do some convincing, so that's going to be a fingers crossed moment.
Right. Do you have any other hobbies besides yarn dyeing and knitting? Like, is there anything else you enjoy doing?
Well, I got a little bit plant obsessed during the pandemic, maybe like several thousand other people. But yeah, I went from maybe about 15, maybe 10 or 15 plants in my house to, I think I'm at around 75 now.
Last
So
time I counted, I had 83. So you still have room to grow.
yeah. Well, I counted in the spring and I had an odd number. So I wanted to get, over 50. I wanted to make, to get over to that. And so then I just kind of just let myself buy without really counting. And so I don't know how many I have anymore. And I also like to do gardening. My husband does a lot of the gardening and the flowering outside, and I do the inside. But yeah, and we just did a lot of work on our house. So that's not the funnest hobby, but I think it has to count as a hobby.
And plus, yarn collecting. Yarn collecting is a.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a very good hobbyist in that area.
Do you have like knitting friends, knitting community, knitting groups that you participate in locally? Like I know you mentioned the local yarn store that you work with, but like, do you have
Yeah.
any knitting friends in the neighborhood?
Yeah, I do. I'm really lucky to live in the same city as another designer that puts out some amazing, amazing sweater designs. And so she has invited me to the knit night that they have at the yarn shop that she likes to, go to that knit night quite a bit. And so some of the people there are so sweet and nice. I haven't done any knit nights in, since late 2019, but yeah, that's one that I really, really enjoy. And a shop I really enjoy with staff I really enjoy. So yeah, that's definitely something I really miss is the knit nights and doing those. I keep thinking I should do a like a matchmaker Zoom call, knit with me kind of thing.
You
And
should. That
then
would be fun.
yeah, you think so? Maybe I
Yeah.
will. I keep tossing it around, like I'll just get on Zoom and put the link in my, on my stories or something. And,
Right.
whoever shows up, shows up.
Right.
So I don't know, I might do that because I do really, really miss knitting with friends. I miss it a lot.
Right. Now, I feel like, especially with COVID, like Zoom became a huge asset. Like I feel like it made quite a difference because it allowed people not only to stay in touch, but like to meet new people,
Yeah,
to meet people from other parts of the world that they would never encounter otherwise. So,
yeah.
it's like really helps growing the community.
Agree. I agree. And also Instagram and the social media has been, particularly for me, Instagram has been really helpful in closing the gap with the knitting, friends. And now I have knitting friends across the country. And
Right.
for so many years, I knitted by myself. I didn't have any knitting friends. For most of the years that I was knitting, I didn't know anyone else who knitted. And, maybe one or two people at work. And, it was just never, it was something I pretty much did solo. And just since I would say 2017 has the community part been so prevalent for me in
Right.
particular. I've just loved being able, I didn't know other people were so nuts about yarn and fiber. I
Right.
had no idea.
Right. You thought you were the only one, but then there's
I
the.
did.
No, that was like for me, it was the biggest surprise when I came to Rhinebeck to see 70,000 people obsessed with knitting. And I was like, I didn't know they even
Wow.
exist, this like
Yeah.
amount of people who like into that.
It's a dream to get to go to Rhinebeck someday. Someday I'll get there.
Have you been to any of the like actual knitting festivals? I mean, I know you said that you participated in walk, but virtual walk, but like, have you ever
Yeah.
gone to
As a
one?
vendor, as a
No, like,
vendor,
or as a consumer?
yeah. I went to Oregon Flock and Fiber in, gosh, I want to say 2018 maybe. And I've been to a couple shows here in Washington. They do a show in Monroe in October called Fiber Fusion.
Mhm.
And I went to that a couple times. And there was a show in February in Tacoma that was a really, really popular one. And I had gone to that several times. And I think so they ended, and the new owners, the new show putter honors, I don't know.
Right.
It's Red Alder. So yeah, so I've been to that, and definitely looking forward to those, shows kind of coming back up again. And then I went to Yarn Revolution in November of 2019, and that was like, it was so much fun because it was kind of like an indie Untangled. It was all indie
Right.
dyers, and it was like I got to see all my friends, and we got to knit and laugh, and it was the best day.
Right.
So yeah.
Do you ever feel discouraged? Do you ever feel like it's too much pressure to put yourself out, to constantly come up with some new stuff that it's like it's not selling as fast as you'd like to do? And how do you deal with that?
Yes. Oh, imposter syndrome, so much. I definitely feel like that. And so what I do, the way that I think about it is, number one, there's room for everyone. And number two, that just because I don't like something, or I didn't think it came out the way I wanted it to, doesn't mean that everyone else is going to see it the same way, right? So I don't get discouraged about things that don't turn out the way that I had maybe wanted them to, because I know that there's there's a yarn for there's a yarn for everyone. And there's an everyone for a yarn, right? Like somebody's gonna like it. It's just a matter of letting them cross my path and me cross theirs. So
Right.
that's the matchmaker part, though, right? Like that's the thing that's lovely about this, is that we've come together, and now we're a part of each other's story. And so this yarn for your project was always for your project. I'm just helping it find you.
Right.
That's the way I look at it.
Was that
So
how the name was born, the Matchmaker
yeah,
Yarn?
yeah, yeah. Because I love that. That's like solving people's problems almost. Like just making people feel like, I can do this, and confident, and and excited and inspired. That those to help people feel those feelings is such an honor to be able to do. So
Right.
the other thing, for me, that the way that I kind of deal with some of that, like imposter syndrome, thought process, because everyone has that, everyone feels
Right.
that way, everyone compares themselves to what other people are doing, is I just don't look at a lot of other indie dyers' work when I'm dyeing yarn. So I don't, and that really doesn't come into play for me too much, as what other people are doing, because once I get in front of my dye pots with my colors, I get lost in the color and in the application and in what that moment is leading me to do. And so I just feel like there's nothing good that will come from comparing yourself to what other people are doing or putting out there. You just put yourself out there and put your own work out there, and the right people will find it.
Right. And I feel like it's also like you have to remind yourself why you got into it in the first place. And that was the fun of it and the love of the
Yeah.
process and the whole
Yep.
artistic discovery of it.
Yes,
So just like
exactly.
sometimes we have to remind ourselves like why we knitting.
Yes. What are we here for? We're here for fun. Knitting is my therapy, right? That's one of my hashtags. Knitting is my yoga. Never not knitting. And community over competition, those are really important things for me. So I don't really compare myself to others. Just
Right.
don't. I don't have time for that. I'm so busy.
It's a dying yarn.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so very much for being my guest today. I really enjoyed our chat and
I'm
getting to know you
so
better.
happy. Thank you so much for inviting me, Irina. I'm so honored that you wanted to speak with me today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.